I'm going to take this nice piece of foam. This is part of the waste that we cut off from the cutting out the hull, and you'll notice if you look at it from that angle, it lines up pretty much perfectly with the side of the boat. So I'm going to take it and pin it in place so it's easy to work with. It's not going to shift around on me like that. And then we'll take something and just simply scribe how much we want to cut. So right there, that's how much we want to cut on that side. And over here on this side, we're going to kind of make an imaginary line. Comes up the side here. That hits all those points. And now we've just made the first part of our hull that's going to make up the bow. So this next one, I've got this pinned in place with a couple bamboo skewers right there. So the next one, I have to be imagining the way these two lines taper in towards the front of the boat. So it actually helps probably to make a little guide mark. And then I'll take my next piece and I'll be like, huh, okay. I need that much width, so I'm going to copy that width onto this piece right here, along with what the top is. Now obviously, if I copy that line, I don't need it that wide. I want it narrower. And I also want to copy the bottom line down here again, so that I can see. And basically, I'm just going to keep tapering in towards the front. Okay, so that's lined up on that side. So I need to come up with a line now that does that. And on this side, I need to make a parallel line to that. Well, not that wide. I want to come down to here. And I'll do this with a few layers. Of course, cutting it out. And this will give me enough material on the bow that when I get to the actual step where I start shaping the sides with the power plane, I can have enough foam there to bring it up to a nice 2-inch point. Now you say, where do you get the 2-inch from? Well, that is roughly a 2-inch point right there. And I'll make this more rounded as I go, but I'm not going to go down to a sharp point. If you have a sharp point in foam like that, even covered in fabric, it smushes, it dents, it looks ugly, you bump it into things, it snaps off. You don't want to do that. So leave everything up to a 2-inch, give it some roundness, and it really isn't going to slow the boat down. I'll tell you that right now. In fact, most of the time this bow will be out of the water. And it's what you want. You actually, this is just to cut through waves and cut through steeper parts in the water, you know, whatever. This part down here is what actually rides around in the water, not up here. But this is all about making up a good shape for getting through. Because obviously if we made it flat like this, that works most of the time until you hit a wave and then boom, and it stops the boat, which is why we're making a point. Okay, so then, like I said, I'm going to have to do a couple of these. So the next thing, once again, is just following the taper line here. So now I need one this wide. I'm going to stick with the same width down here on the bottom. That's actually going to end up with a angle being ground into it this way with the power plane. So it doesn't really matter how blocky and deep it is. In the final shaping, it'll come around. But the next piece I need to make needs to be that wide and that deep, and this one might work. I'll have to play with it and find out. That's one of the things you do with the foam scraps is you keep figuring, and you can glue pieces on whatever. It's not rocket science. And like I said, at the end, when you shape it all down, it really doesn't matter what you did to shape it. As you can see, I used multiple pieces of foam on this one and brought it out to a nice bow, and once that's wrapped, you'll never know how I stack the foam underneath it. But this was one where I decided I needed to add one more layer of foam, just because more seaworthiness and better in waves and cross wakes and things like that, more capability of staying afloat. As you can see with that one, I didn't need to because of the way the hull went together, but this one I did. And this is why one of those, there's not like a you have to do it this way or it doesn't work. This is much more of one where you fit stuff together until it all comes about right, and then smooth it all off. And there's no right or wrong way. It's just however it works for you and how you put it together. It's the great thing about this. You're not going to end up with an ugly gap that everybody can see if you take your time, fill things in, and keep gluing pieces on, and you'll be all set. Here we go. I got another layer on, getting ready to pin another one. It looks like the next one should bring me down to about my 2 inches, what I want to see. And then we'll be able to just glue all of this together and go on to what we do after that. And as you can see, I'm not worrying quite so much about the depth, because it's gonna have a point like this on it to give it a nice bow for going into waves and just looking more swept back and hydrodynamic and all the things that you want a kayak to look like. And so now you can see with this last level that I'm putting on, I've now gotten it down to about 2 inches, close enough. From here on, it'll just be up to how I shape it, how I glue it together, things like that. But I'll pin this one on and set everything up with glue, and then we'll use tape to actually hold it together for gluing, and leave it overnight, and it'll be ready to shape tomorrow. Just demonstrating again how when your skewers are buried, because you cut them off flush, you just grab them with the flush cuts and drag them back out. And that sets up, gets you ready for doing the next one. Now in this case, I have these V marks in the top, so I'm going to know how these are laid out. But when I go to glue them, obviously I want to have everything stacked, so I'm going to set them down back here on the hull in the order they're going to go back on, and that way I won't be all this hunting and what do I do and everything else, when I should be at the stage where I'm just gluing. And of course, before gluing, I want to scar up my foam, help it have a little bit better grip into with the glue. And the more that you scar it up like this, the more the glue has more surface area and adhering both sides. Same with this. And of course, with laying the glue on, I don't want to go too crazy, only because this glue, of course, on a vertical seam is going to want to just run out the bottom. And I know that the edges don't need it anyways, because they're not really going to be involved in the final kayak. But I just want to give it a good cover over like that. take and put it up against, lining up our marks that I made earlier, so that I know that I've got this where I wanted. This is where it helps to already have your holes pre-made, because you know that you've gotten it pretty close to where you wanted it from last time. There's the first one, and then we just continue on with the rest. Once you just see, once again, how I'm making sure that these guidelines, keeping everything aligned as I glue it. So you can see how I've got it all stuck together. This is one step. You definitely want to be thinking about what's underneath your boat, because glue is probably going to drip. I got a nice clamp set up here to be able to push it all together. A little block of wood there for it to push against on this side, and clamp holding that way, so this should be good and tight. My nice little support here, because this is a long body clamp. It's very heavy, but it works well for big stuff like this. And thanks to the skewers that pin each level into the last one, this will stay aligned as it cures. The clamp will hold it together. I'll come back tomorrow or next time I get to work on it, and I'll find that this is ready for shaping on this end, and on to the next.